Okay, what is up, my brothers and sisters, my agents of respect? It's your boy Trey Johnson back with another episode of the No Disrespect But podcast. Before we get started, I introduce our guest today. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Always feel free to comment. Just keep those comments respectful, all right? And so this guy right here is no stranger to the podcast, no stranger to the podcast game. We actually got in this thing together. So I want you guys to get introduced to Logan Graffia, currently a production assistant and contributing reporter at WLAE in New Orleans, and also the host of the Sports Étouffée Podcast that comes out every Monday. You catch it on YouTube and pretty much anywhere else you listen to your podcast. So, Logan, man, I want to give you the floor. Glad to have you join the show. Introduce yourself to the folks.
Well, I mean, there's people know if people have been watching you and I for years, everyone knows that you and I had a show once upon a time when we was in college one summer, and then we kind of got separated because you moved away and we couldn't do it no more, so kind of had to go a different route. But yeah, so been doing this podcasting thing for a while. I used to have a show with my good friend Calvin, and then I just wanted to do my own thing.
Hmm.
I started Sports Étouffée uh, because I just wanted to see if I could just talk all things Louisiana sports and even mix in some other things. That's what Étouffée is anyway. So, uh, yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter. I'm not hard to find. Everyone knows I'm always on Twitter speaking my mind as well as non-political as I can. so, so yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And y'all, man, this guy is incredible. One of the best sports minds I've had the pleasure of knowing, and he's gonna be one of those lead anchors. We were used to some of those guys in New Orleans for a long time, but once they're ready for some new blood, this is gonna be a guy you see for a long, long time. Wouldn't surprise me if he ends up on the national stage one of these days. So happy to have him on. And before we hop into New Orleans Saints business and just NFL business, man. Just kind of want to start things off with the national championship game that kicked off last night. You had the University of Michigan seeking their first championship since 1997, going up against the Washington Huskies, seeking their first championship, which they were co-champions in 1991. So glad that we're out of that business. But you know, Michigan beats them 34-13, but and Logan can probably tell you if you watch that game, the score doesn't really dictate how close of a game it was. It was really close, fairly going well into the fourth quarter, and Michigan just happened to pull away. And so obviously they did their thing with the ground and pound, 300 yards rushing, so that was kind of their thing. JJ McCarthy just kind of had to drive the bus, so to speak. And I think that's a stretch, even saying that he drove. He probably was just next to the driver, just pointing, completing only 10 passes, right? Which is unheard of in college football of a quarterback doing that and you winning. Obviously, Penix, Heisman finalist, runner up, actually struggled accuracy wise, missed some routine throws that he would hit 9.9 times out of 10 throughout the year. And so, maybe the rushing, only 46 yards rushing, that kind of hurt them as well. But otherwise, Michigan wins their first championships in 1997. Coach Harbaugh may go off into the sunset with a victory now. Logan, just kind of want to hear from you, man. What were some of the things that you were thinking as you were watching that game, and just give us some of your thoughts on how it turned out and things like that.
So from watching it, you can see what Michigan's game plan was. It was to run the football and get after Michael Penix. They was going to try to force him to make tough throws, and they did. They pressured him almost on every possession, and there's a reason why that Michigan defense was number one all year. Now, I was skeptical at first when they was even in the playoffs. I know they was undefeated because I mean, in my eyes, they play in somewhat of a weaker division. I mean, we're fans of SEC teams over here, and we're used to seeing SEC is like the NFL division of college football. But Michigan really surprised me because I mean that defense was very NFL esque, and I mean you wouldn't expect anything less from a former NFL coach or future NFL coach now, Jim Harbaugh. And with Washington, their defense was struggling all year long. I mean, I was talking to Washington Husky fans all the time on Twitter, going back and forth, and they always say, "Oh yeah," because I mean, I was always talking about how much LSU probably would have had a chance to be in there if it wasn't for their defense, and then they want to tell me that Washington's defense is just as bad. But it was kind of what Washington's defense is a little bit better than LSU. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting off topic here for a second. But Washington's defense, they were the weaker one out of the two, of course. I mean, Washington is just mainly offense. I mean, there was times where Washington's offense bailed them out of a lot of games this year, even though there was one game where it was, I think, like 15-7, where Washington narrowly beat Arizona State. But Washington usually has that type of offense where they can just come back. But Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, put together a great game plan for Penix. I mean, Penix does not like to run. He does not, because he's mobile, but not really. He can run if he has to, but he's not that fast. He probably runs like a 4.9, if anything. I mean, that's still quick to me, but that Michigan defense was pretty damn good. I mean, I feel even old seeing Chris Jenkins' son, Chris Jenkins Jr., probably the second, on that defensive side of the ball too for Michigan. I mean, the whole Michigan defensive line is probably going to be draft picks very, very soon.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just astounded by Michigan, because I really thought that when Michigan and Bama was playing, got seated up together, I honestly thought that Bama was going to beat them. I really did, because I was like, okay, Bama so far this year has improved each and every week since that USF debacle that they had in when they had to play in a swamp at Raymond James. So,
Yeah.
hats off to Michigan. I gotta give credit to Michigan. I mean, what I seen was a great game plan by Jim Harbaugh, and I know, I mean, just running the ball. Basically it was. It reminded me of when the Broncos and the Panthers played. Peyton Manning barely did anything, and they still won. That's basically what it was with the Michigan offense. I mean, it was that defense that won that game for Michigan, basically.
Yeah. And to your point with Alabama and Michigan matchup, I think Washington, excuse me, ended up making honestly the same mistake that Alabama made in abandoning the run for absolutely no reason in such a close game. And obviously, you understand you have NFL wide receivers, probably NFL tight end and Westover as well, and obviously that great offensive line. But I think there was just so much pressure to put on them. I mean, you're having your quarterback throw 51 times, and like I said, in a one possession game up until 8 minutes in the fourth quarter. And so Dylan Johnson, a guy that is a huge part of what got them there. I mean, I know we talk about, again, the quarterback, the receivers, the offensive line, and he was a little dinged up. But even if you go to his backup, you got to utilize the running game. You just can't abandon it. And I think that kind of did Washington in, because then Penix, even when he was getting the ball out, was taking some hits. I think he kind of there was like one play where he has Westover wide open. He's climbing in the pocket, and he's more so thinking about dodging the hit as opposed to getting the ball to Westover. And so you could tell that, Michigan was kind of getting into his head. And look, I give Michigan all the, respect they deserve. But part of me, man, it's like watching the Houston Astros win the World Series, right? You have that large asterisk. And regardless of how they want to twist it, that, it has no bearings, and stealing signs has no bearings on what we do on the field. I mean, when it has started 3 years ago, and in the past 3 years, you have turned into the Michigan that nobody knew about. You start to speculate and wonder just how integral, right, Connor Stallions and his operation were into setting Michigan on this championship track. Again, I guess games still have to be played, right? But it's a little different when they know exactly what you're doing based on the signs that they see. So, it's a give or take. We know how the NCAA does these things. You and I will be old and gray when they finally come to a decision on what they want to do about this championship. And so at that point, nobody really cares. Honestly, I don't think anybody cares now, because the whole narrative is Michigan fought through adversity. I don't think you can count it as adversity when you've caused it, right? But all in all, they've been a number one team for quite some time in the rankings, and they proved it that, hey, we're still the top team in the nation. And so going through Alabama, going through that high potent offense in Washington, they did what they had to do. And it's not always pretty, right? But who
Never.
cares if it's a W at the end of the day? And so uh, for the most part, had a great playoff, and I think we were having a great national championship until towards the very end. But as you kind of start to think about next season, and again, it's way too early, right? But it's never too early to be too early. Um, just want to hear. I know we're going to a 12-team playoff, but just kind of thinking about, okay, these might be the top four teams when it's said and done. What are some teams that are on your radar that you think might be in that number with a chance to capture a national championship next season?
It might be almost a complete SEC Final Four. I mean, three of the four teams might be from the SEC. I mean, I would have to throw Texas back in there because a lot of their players are returning. I mean, even Quinn
Mhm.
Ewers looks like he's returning, even though he's losing his fabulous wide receiver and Mitchell probably to the NFL. It
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
like.
yeah. He's gone. Yeah.
And then, I mean, of course, you can't never knock the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, they went on that incredible win streak until your boys up there in Tuscaloosa knocked them down in Atlanta in the SEC
Mhm.
championship. And then, I mean, number three, you can't never count out Nick Saban in Alabama. I hate to say it, as much as I dislike Bama, I got to give them credit. I mean, every year they have a chance to win it. And then, I mean, number four is a toss up. It could be Michigan. It could be some sleeper team that we're not even thinking about because, I
Mhm.
mean, there's so many teams this year that was actually really, really good. I mean, the fourth team, maybe it is going to be Florida State this time around
Yeah.
next year. We don't know. So, I'm praying that maybe LSU and Brian Kelly sneak into that playoff finally this year, even if it's like in the 12th seed. But at number four is a toss up. I mean, the
Yeah.
1 through 3 might be SEC, and it's even crazier to even think that the Texas Longhorns are going to be in the SEC.
Right.
My whole life, they've been what in like the Big 12, Big 10, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so right now, that's my first three off the top. I mean,
Mhm.
number four, for all we know, could be Missouri because I mean,
Could be.
Missouri was such a sleeper team this year. I mean, I still am quite puzzled how Missouri was ahead of LSU in the rankings this year after we came back and beat them double digits after that. What happened up there at Missouri? But hey, I think it's a crapshoot because I mean, I think a lot of teams are. Number four could be Ohio State because I mean, every
That could
year
be
Ohio.
right.
I mean, they just got Junkins from Ole Miss in the portal. I mean, everything's a question mark at Ohio State because everyone left, including their quarterback. So, I mean, 1 through 4 might be three SEC teams, and then you got one that's Ohio State. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. And I'm kind of with you, a little bit in terms of three of the four teams ending up being in the SEC. Look, um, BCS era changed because we had once in a lifetime an all SEC national championship. And so they ran to a playoff. And then we got another all SEC national championship. And you pretty much put yourself in danger of having that happen every year if the SEC West and or SEC East champion both kind of got in with one loss or less, right? And then you said, oh, well, we need more teams. And now, in my opinion, you have turned it into the SEC Invitational when they had what, maybe 5 teams in the top 15. So now you just put them in a situation where they're clearly the best conference based on your ranking system. And so if there's a 2-loss, maybe 3-loss SEC team based on strength of schedule, they may get in over a 2-loss or 1 loss, or even, dare I say it, another undefeated conference champion. And so I just think you just made a dumpster fire worse. But as always, we have to see it happen before we go through it. But I do think at some point we might go back to the BCS rankings, or at least utilizing the computer system, because we see when it's down to a bunch of humans in that room, it's unpredictable. But just kind of stay on point. in no particular order, look, I got Alabama going in there, and not just because of my personal allegiances to it, but just thinking, okay, Jalen Milroe going into an offseason, knowing he's the guy. Obviously, Coach Tommy Rees can put an offense centered around him. Going to be going to the young guys in the backfield now with Jace McClellan going to the NFL and Roydell Williams going into the transfer portal. So excited to see what those guys bring to the table next season. And obviously with the wide receiver group, you lose Malik Benson to the transfer portal. You lose Ja'Cory Brooks to the transfer portal. You lose Jermaine Burton to the NFL draft. There's going to be some key guys that we're trying to replace. But, somebody asked me, hey, man, what does Alabama have to do next year? And I was like, look, we need to get back to getting athletes the ball. It's great to have a quarterback that can do a lot of things, both with his arm and his legs. Obviously, you want to commit somewhat to the run, but just get the athletes the ball. Everything doesn't have to be a shot play. So I think they'll be able to do some things. Really interested to see who they bring in that defensive coordinator. But I at least think the standard and type of that mentality for them defensively has returned, and they're bringing some senior leadership back as well. Obviously, can't leave out UGA. I mean, look, up until one game, they were the best team in the country, right? So I don't think they're just going to have a fall off. I do think they may end up being that one or two loss team that I'm talking about because their schedule was a little bit brutal. And look, I'm kind of happy for it because they don't get the hide in the SEC East anymore, so they actually have to play some people. And so I'm excited about that. But I think due to them having that kind of strength of schedule, so to speak, they're going to have give them a break so they can get, maybe they can come out of this with one or two losses, and maybe a SEC championship berth. So we'll see, how UGA does. But I think with a 12-team playoff, I don't see how they get left out in this first rendition. And I'm with you on Texas, returning so many guys from an incredible season, including their starting quarterback. They got Baxter, who was a true freshman this year, so I think he's going to be a whole lot better coming into next season. And obviously, that defense, I think Sark has transformed from his Pac-12 ways and is like, hey, if I'm a win, I'm going to have to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So as it stands, I have Texas. That could be LSU. That could be Ole Miss. That could be Mizzou. I mean, who knows? It could be the Florida States, the Ohio States of the world, right? Kind of what you were saying. And look, this one that I got in my fourth, or at least one of my four teams, is going to scratch some heads, but I got USC in that thing. And look, people like Trey, they went 7-5 with probably the best quarterback prospect in years. And I get it. But if you know anything about Lincoln Riley, sometimes I think Caleb Williams and his superstardom and his power, he tried to play outside of that system, right? And I've seen Lincoln Riley be way too successful with quarterbacks. We thought Spencer Rattler was going to be a first-round pick under this guy. And I think, getting a guy like Miller Moss, who's not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy that, hey, I'm going to run what the hell coach tells me to run. I'm going to get the ball to who I need to get it to. That's really the Lincoln Riley system and the Lincoln Riley prototype. Maybe by some grace of God, if they can find a defense in the Big Ten, they'll be just fine. But Big Ten hasn't seen an offense like that. And I think if they turn things into a shootout, I'm going to take USC in a shootout above anybody. And so I just think they're building their roster out just to kind of really be in the confines of what Lincoln Riley likes to do. And so I can see them coming in year one in the Big Ten and taking that conference. I mean, Ohio State's being led by Walker Howard. I don't know about that. Michigan, who's going to be their quarterback next year? Who's going to be their head coach next year? So there's going to be a lot of transition there. Do they have some sort of penalty coming from this investigation at the start of next season? Who knows? So I'm taking USC as kind of a dark horse candidate. I think Lincoln Riley is going to put a lot of people on notice and maybe parlay it into a NFL opportunity if he can. But one transition to the NFL. We're on Tuesday, but yesterday was what has been come to be known as Black Monday in the NFL. That's when coaches, GMs, coordinators, sometimes even changes of ownership happen around the NFL. And currently we have 6 known vacancies right now in Atlanta, in the Chargers organization, Vegas, Washington, Tennessee, and Carolina. But there's also been some talks about what Coach Belichick may be doing in New England. And so it's looking like he may leave. Whenever Bill Belichick starts to say, I'll give up organizational control if I stay in New England, I think the writing is kind of on the wall, right? So we're going to talk about them as maybe possibly a seventh opening. But kind of before we get to that, man, we know one organization that doesn't have a head coach opening, and that is our New Orleans Saints. For the third year in a row, they are sticking with continuity, with culture, and I get it. Look, they finished the season 4-1, but we know who they played in those last 5 games. Finished top 16 on offense, finished top 10 on defense. So, in a 9-8 record, a team that we thought coming in had a chance to win 10 or 11 games, win a division quite easily, having the league's easiest schedule, or the second easiest schedule, I believe, by the time it was said and done. And they just kind of pissed down their legs, failed to meet expectations, most namely our big prize free agent, Derek Carr, failed to meet expectations, and not just so much statistically, but even as a leader, we saw some issues there as well. And so, man, what's the future of our team?
It's bleak, in my opinion, because, you know how I used to be. I was always this guy, I love the old school offense. I love all these older players. Yeah, we need all these vets. But as I've kind of just stood back and watched, I'm like, man, this team is old, and normally older teams are not successful in the NFL. An older team in college works because, okay, you have a bunch of seniors. Yeah, that works in college because that's all 24-year-olds. But when you have one of the oldest rosters in the league and everyone else has like got 24, 25, 26-year-olds filling out their roster, and maybe a 33 or a 32-year-old here and there, you're going to lose to those teams 9 times out of 10 because youth is on their side. Right now, youth is not on our side. And you know how I felt when we signed Derek Carr. I'm like, okay, cool. We got a quarterback. Boom. I think we can win the division. I think we're going to win 10 games. I even was with you on that, 10 games. Because I went to camp. I saw what they was doing. Because, I was coming back from camp in 2022 in the summer, and I was like, oh my God, this team looks awful. And I remember telling you, because you was asking me, what do you see? This is before Derek Carr signed. I was like, well, Andy Dalton looks good. And that should have been when people should have sounded off the smoke alarms, because if I'm saying that and nothing else, then something's wrong. This year, I'm like, okay, Derek Carr looks good. The offense looks like it's going to be pretty darn good as well, but it did not transition on the playing field in the regular season. We saw that one series against Kansas City in the preseason with Derek Carr, and he let him down the field. It was just like smooth. It was like boom, 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 boom. He was getting the ball out like less than 3 seconds. He even threw a touchdown to Keith Kirkwood in the back of the end zone in that game. And we all thought, wow, if this is what we're going to get every game, the Saints might be able to win more than 10 games. Hell, they could be facing like someone like the Eagles or something in the NFC Championship. That didn't happen. That didn't happen this year. So the future of this team, I don't see the future, because with Dennis Allen on this team, the future is bleak. And I hate being pessimistic because I'm not a pessimistic person. But if you want a future, then go draft the future, because right now we kind of have, no pun intended, we have a leader in Carr. The car that we have right now has probably about 190,000 miles on it. Yeah, I've heard Toyota Camrys can go like 300,000 miles. They go for life, but Derek Carr is not a Camry. He's more like, that old, like, Lincoln Continental that was in your grandma's garage in the 90s. That's a gas guzzler, and it's got like 190,000 miles on it. You're not going to win with that. And it's no disrespect to Derek Carr, because, end of the year, we went 4-1, which that's even to my surprise. He looked fairly good, but it was against bad teams. In the Rams game, we was losing like 30-7.
Yeah.
And Well, at that point, your coach, Sean McVay, okay, play vanilla defense. There's no way in heck they're coming back. So I'm assuming Coach McVay called off the dogs, and that's why the Saints came back. And it's no disrespect to the Saints at all, because I mean that's our team and everything, but I just think they was going up against a prevent defense, and it's so
Yeah.
easy to score on a prevent defense. It's not even funny. So the future is bleak, man. I'm not excited. I mean, this year I was coming home telling everybody how excited I was for this season, and it just backfired. I don't know what the heck happened. I guess I forgot that Dennis Allen's the head coach and Pete Carmichael's the OC. But hey, it sounds like Jon Gruden's going to come and save the day. You know, I
Oh,
mean,
God, no.
I was all for it at first. I mean, I know you and I discussed it. I was telling you, man, maybe they ought to bring Gruden in. Maybe I mean, this was me like in August, September, heck, even in October when we were struggling. Maybe Gruden could come in and yell at everybody and fix everything. And now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, well, I was kind of just kidding a little bit, but now I don't want it. But it seems like he's going to be on the staff, and if that's what you want your future to be, then that's your bed you got to lay in. And I'm not excited about it. And
Yeah.
it looks like without Jeff Ireland and Kai Harley possibly here, then the future might be even, excuse me, bleaker. So the future of this team, I just don't see it. I don't see the light anytime soon.
And look, you ask what happened. Look, man, the Derek Carr experience is what has happened. It's not being bad enough to get in the top five, but not being good enough to get to the playoffs and actually do some damage. And look, we've had these conversations early on in the offseason where even before Derek Carr, and it was rumors spreading that hey, the Saints are looking at getting Derek Carr. That's probably going to be their guy. That's who Coach Dennis Allen wants. And I was like, he can come for the right price. And that was always my thing. If he comes, it should be for the right price. But I would rather, knowing what I know about Derek Carr, I know our team, right, is more than just a quarterback away. We have a quarterback. I always felt we had a quarterback in Jameis that had 1 year left on his deal, making money. So you had an opportunity to put money to other positions. You could have drafted a quarterback, kind of how you drafted Jake Hayner, even though a Dorian Thompson-Robinson would have been better, in my opinion, a Clayton Tune, two guys who we met with the most at that position. Obviously, I was hoping maybe Drew's connection to Purdue might get us an Aiden O'Connell, who, got the starting job in Vegas and probably not going to be the guy, but he at least showed enough to where they may consider, hey, we might just get some weapons, maybe bring another vet in and have them compete, at least in coach, hopefully Pierce, and we'll get to that in a second, their first year, whoever that coach might be. So that's kind of what my vision of the team is going to be. And look, maybe if we stay healthy, we win 10 games, which should be enough to win the division. The division was going with 9 games. So it shows that that's really all you had to do. 10 was the magic number, right? And so then when we got Derek Carr and I saw the contract, I was like, I would have personally liked more of a Jimmy G type contract, where, hey, if it doesn't look promising, we can get off of this in a year. And a part of that was because, hey, this guy did get benched by a team that drafted him and developed him for almost a decade. And we have to take that into account. We have to protect the organization first. I get what Dennis Allen wanted, but who really thought that he was going to be the long time after last season and just the way he conducted himself? Who thought he was going to be the guy long term, right? And someone like you never thought he was going to be the guy long term. So why give that much of an investment in what he wants personnel wise? But we did it. Ended up giving Derek Carr a new trade clause. It's like, hey, you could back me up on this. Said, hey, look, we might be good. 10, 11 wins based on the schedule, we should be fine. When guys were talking, hey, Super Bowl, we're going to win 13, 14 games. I was like, hey, guys, you can't do that to Derek Carr. Like, that's not his thing. His thing is you were coming in thinking, they may be okay this year, and he blows it out of the park, and you're like, holy crap, this guy can really take us places. And that was what got him by for 8 years in Oakland. And then they make it to the playoffs. Coach Gruden gets fired, essentially. They have an interim. They go crazy towards the end of the year. They win a thrilling shootout in the last game of the season against the Chargers to get to the playoffs. They are within one play of beating the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, right? And then it's like, oh crap! Like if we had this and we had that, the Raiders can really be something. What do? First thing they go get hot shot offensive coordinator Josh McDaniel to be their head coach. And then they go get, at that time, the best wide receiver in the land in Devontae Adams, who just so happens to be Derek Carr's best friend from college. And it's like, not only are they probably going to make the playoffs, they are a Super Bowl contender. Kansas City is reeling. This is the Vegas Raiders' chance. And that was way too much. And in a season where they had one of the better receiving performances, Devontae Adams didn't have a drop off. Josh Jacobs ends up leading the league in rushing. The common denominator was the quarterback. And so when he got to us, he said, hey, if we can just keep it to what it was for him in 2021, I think we'll be fine. But nobody really wanted to listen. And that's what, fandom does, right? And that's kind of where we are now, man. Like, he finishes the season strong. You have some people that have forgotten 12 weeks of tape and now I want to say, hey, we're going to be good next season. Obviously, people in the Saints organization are kind of on that same line as well, even though based on what I'm hearing, I think quarterback of the future, I should say, is still a position that they want to attack. Obviously, you're going to be losing Jameis Winston. Who truly knows what you have in Jake Hayner? You want to make sure you have the young guy in the building, and hopefully that's a guy, like a Jaden Daniels coming out, maybe a Michael Penix Jr., maybe a Cam Ward, but you want somebody else in that position to, again, Derek Carr essentially has 1 year left on his deal. If he has kind of a slow start again, turn to that young guy and see if you have something, right? That's kind of what the hope has to be at this point. And hopefully that could also signal the meaning of the Dennis Allen era. But as of now, the guy still has a job. So
I don't know
let's just
how.
kind of segue to the teams that made the right decision to can their coaches. Well, most of them. Tennessee, you suck, but I think the writing was on the wall there. But so and like I said, we're gonna say 7 vacant spots, but we'll start with Atlanta. So they fired Coach Arthur Smith, who was 7-10 3 years in a row. Who's a guy that you see maybe going into that position for them?
A guy that I see, I mean, for them and probably all of these spots, actually, I mean, you got to throw Ben Johnson's name out there. And I mean, it would be unfortunate for us because, I mean, I don't want to coach against Ben Johnson because, I mean, he's a great offensive mind. I think he's going to be an incredible head coach. If he's in the right organization, I mean, I don't know. I mean, going to Atlanta, if Ben Johnson gets him like a veteran quarterback that he likes out there, maybe like a Ryan Tannehill or a Russell Wilson, I mean, then you pair him, then you pair Tannehill off with, or Russell Wilson with Bijan, Drake London. I mean, that offensive line isn't nothing to slouch at.
Right.
I mean, that defense isn't that bad. I mean, they need some tweaking at the corner spots. I think AJ Terrell is a little bit overrated, but I mean, Ben Johnson's a guy I think that's probably a guy for that job. I mean, there's a Falcons fan that I actually know in the LSU fan base who's actually a New Orleanian. Unfortunately, don't know how that happened, but he was even talking about maybe Antonio Pierce might be a guy that they can look at. He would like that, but it seems like the New York Giants might have interest in Antonio Pierce being their next DC if Vegas is, dumb enough not to hire him. But it seems like it's highly likely that Antonio Pierce won't be the head coach of Vegas. So, but yeah, Ben Johnson probably for all the job openings, I would say, but more so for Atlanta. I mean, which would be unfortunate for us because I think that offense is maybe a quarterback and a good, excuse me, play caller away from being really good. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And with Atlanta, man, you gotta take that with a grain of salt because the guys that you think might be a home run hire end up not panning out. And then a guy like Dan Quinn, you're like, oh yeah, they got Dan Quinn. Let's see how he is without the Legion of Boom. He comes in and is a superstar and gets them to a Super Bowl and almost a Super Bowl victory. So they're always kind of hit and miss, but some bad organizations are. I mean, we're kind of one of them, to be honest with you. We just got lucky for 15 years. Thinking of that position, the guy I thought about was maybe Kellen Moore. Was OC for the Chargers, and obviously he had a chance to be the interim coach when they fired their coach, but he kind of said, "Hey, no, you guys are not going to soil my name." So that kind of let us know that he's probably looking for a head coach opportunity. Guy had a few interviews last offseason before he took the OC job in with the Chargers. So he's a guy I can see them, Arthur Blank kind of buying into, a young guy that's hungry for a chance, and maybe innovative offensive mind, knows how to utilize the running backs. That's what drives Atlanta, right? And to your point, if they can get a veteran quarterback like a Russell Wilson, some are saying they're going to be going hard for Kirk Cousins, maybe as a guy to come in. So who knows? But I can see Kellen Moore. I can see Ben Johnson. I mean, it's a really good job. I think you have the right ownership of a guy in Arthur Blank. He's going to try to do as much as he can to give you what you want and let you do your job. So, I mean, I think a lot of young coaches, especially if it's going to be their first job, they're going to want to maybe take him up on that offer. But speaking of the Chargers, who's a guy or maybe even a couple guys you think are looking at that job? Because some are saying that's the top job in the NFL right now.
Well, I mean, anytime you use the city of Los Angeles as a point of emphasis, it's like, oh, come coach in sunny California, Los Angeles, land of paradise. I'm gonna tie this name to both the Chargers and the Vegas job. Probably Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I would say Jim Harbaugh is probably the guy for both Chargers and the Vegas job. I'm sure he's the. I mean, you have two big market teams. I mean, Vegas. I mean, they got basically a brand new stadium. I mean, state of the art. Everything's still basically brand new over there. Everything's state of the art. Mark Davis has been putting out a slew of money, and then you got the Chargers. I mean, they're attractive in a way because I mean, you got Justin Herbert, you got Mike Williams, you got a lot of good defenders over there. I mean, they're just Brandon Staley was never the guy for them. He just made it off of Sean McVay's name because he was DC of the Rams and whatnot over there. So, I mean, maybe Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert could work as I think J.J. McCarthy's not Justin Herbert, but I mean, he's kind of similar. They're not similar styles, but I think Jim Harbaugh has coached someone like, I mean, Justin Herbert's kind of Alex Smith-esque. And I mean, he coached Alex Smith for a year before Colin Kaepernick took over when Smith got injured. So I think the Harbaugh-Herbert thing could work if he brings back that 49ers offensive playbook that he had. So from back in the day. So I would say Harbaugh for both the Chargers and Vegas.
Yeah. And I'm kind of with you on that. I think with Coach Harbaugh, it'll come down to money essentially, and we know the Spanos family is notoriously known for being cheap, but they have Justin Herbert, right? And Las Vegas, man, the Davis family, there, especially Mark, he'll pay. He's paying two coaches right now that aren't on his team, so he's not shy about big spending. And I'll cover both of those. I do think Jim Harbaugh might end up, if he does come back to the NFL, I think he's going to fall for the Chargers job just because I think I have my quarterback. I have a guy that's my quarterback. He's under contract. He already signed his extension. He's under contract. I can work with that. Bring my guys in on the defensive end to really help that side of the ball out. And we're really cooking with something. And just in terms of coaching IQ, I'm going to take Jim Harbaugh with some of the best of them in the game, both college and in the NFL. So I could see that being a little bit more attractive based on personnel. He's already done the coming in to a team that has lost its luster, and I'm going to build it up. I think he's beyond that now. He's done it pretty much every step of his coaching career. Now, if it's time, if you're going to leave Michigan and go to the NFL, go somewhere where you at least got some pieces in place, and then you can just kind of put your twist on it and tweak it a little bit. in Vegas, like I said, and like you said, they're going to be interested in Jim Harbaugh. They're going to be interested in a lot of head coaching candidates. But I'm going to hold faith that they hire Coach Pierce for two reasons. One, I think he's just earned the job. I think he's earned the respect of the players. I think he's just earned the respect of folks around the organization. And you don't want to mess up twice. You had this instance in 2021, I believe, where your interim coach comes in, gets you to the playoffs. The players love him, and you don't choose him, right? And that kind of was set the precedent for a bad 2022 season. And so I think with all this excitement, all of this buzz, a fan base which you were hungry for now in Vegas, they're crazy about this team, crazy about this coach. We have to make this happen. And also, you don't want to have to spend tons of money on another coach to come in. You've already done that twice and you failed miserably. One of which wasn't really your fault. Who knew that the coach was going to be a racist homophobe, right? But it is what it is. Um, Coach Pierce probably won't cost as much as the Jim
Probably not.
Harbaughs of the world. And you can give him, hey, a 3-year deal, some good pay, and give him an opportunity to see what he can do and lead your team. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, I don't think anybody's going to be that mad at you because it's like, hey, well, the guy did do what he had to do to earn a shot, right? So I just think it's too easy of a home run hire to bring in Coach Pierce, right? It just makes too much sense, but I hope they do the thing that makes the most sense. Um, let's go to Washington. Obviously, new ownership. Magic Johnson's a part of that ownership group. They're bringing in some high-level executives to do this coaching search. Already reaching out to guys. Who's somebody that you think may get that job?
Well, I mean, it's even interesting enough. They even brought in another basketball guy. I mean, Bob Myers. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of unbelievable. We've seen that move before. I just want to touch on that a little bit. I mean, hell, the Browns, I remember, brought in that Moneyball guy from baseball, and it kind of worked. So, I mean, I guess why not bring in a basketball guy who's won 4 championships and help you build the Washington up? But, I mean, one name that intrigues me with Washington, I've seen some of their requests, and I mean, usually I will go with the offensive guy, but Dan Quinn is very intriguing
Mm-hmm.
for that job. I mean,
Okay.
I've seen him get interviewed for that, and I mean, I would have loved to see Eric Bieniemy get a chance, but I think the team was just kind of so bad this year. The offense under him started out here, and then it kind of plummeted, and not all his fault, but kind
Mm-hmm.
of. So I think Dan Quinn would be, excuse me, quite intriguing for that job, to say the least, because we've seen what he's done since he's been fired from Atlanta. I mean, he's gone to Dallas and turned that defense into just a stout defense. I mean, with Michael Parsons and Darren Bland, I mean, all those guys over there. Excuse me. And I just think he would be very different from Ron Rivera. I mean, Ron Rivera, I mean, he was good in Carolina for a little bit, then
Mm-hmm.
slacked off. Then Washington, I mean, Ron Rivera kind of got the bad end of the stick because I mean, when he was hired in Washington, you had very awful ownership. You have a very awful general manager. I mean, everything was going to hell in a handbasket over there when he took over. So he kind of took over a bad situation, but then was kind of changing the culture a little bit. So with Dan Quinn over there, I mean, and then you pair him off with maybe like so if Justin Fields stays in Chicago and the Commanders keep that second pick, I mean, you can pair Dan Quinn off with maybe someone like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels if they want to draft Jaden that high or Drake May. I mean, you have a chance. I mean, when Dan Quinn was with Atlanta, I mean, Atlanta wasn't terrible. I mean, they had a couple bumps in the road, maybe like his first 2 years, but then after that, it was like they went to a Super Bowl, even though 28-3.
Right.
But Dan Quinn would probably be the most intriguing to me. I've seen some of the other candidates, like a Mike McDonald from
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore and things of that nature. They even have interest in Jim Harbaugh too. It seems like everyone else does too. Everyone has interest in Jim, but I think Dan Quinn would probably be the most intriguing. And then one that I don't even know if they're interviewing him is Bobby Slowick. I mean, he was on that staff once upon a time under Jay Gruden when it was horrible. So Bobby Slowick could be a name that you could throw out there too.
Okay. And we'll talk about the final three. Who you thinking for Tennessee, Carolina, and New England?
Carolina, I mean, New England, I would have to say, if New England lets Bill go, which would be crazy that everybody that we've seen growing up, coaches, players, everything, finally, they're all gone at this point. I mean, Bill's getting up there in age. I would probably have to say Mike Vrabel. I mean, Mike
Okay.
Vrabel just seems like the perfect fit. I mean, comes from the New England tree, played for Belichick in a couple of Super Bowls, and I mean, you can go get Josh McDaniels back if you want to keep the Patriots way there. Even though I thought Josh
Mm-hmm.
McDaniels has been a horrible head coach. Carolina, I've seen some of the interviews. I mean, they've interviewed Ben Johnson, or no, they've requested to interview Ben
Mm-hmm.
Johnson. They've requested Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick would be interesting with Bryce Young, but the thing is, Bryce Young is not CJ Stroud. No offense to Bryce Young, but I think Carolina is horrible. I wouldn't want that Carolina job because
Mm-hmm.
I just think Carolina has years to go, and it sucks because I know Bryce is not a bad quarterback. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
watched this guy play in college. I mean, my LSU Tigers played against him too, and it's just that Carolina job I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But it's just I think maybe Ben Johnson might get the job. I mean, that seems to be their number one choice, but that I don't know. Tennessee is very shocking to me because I mean, Mike
Yeah.
Vrabel win a record and then he gets fired. I mean, you got a guy here in New Orleans on airline, just living it up with a losing record and keeps his
Mm-hmm.
job. Mike Vrabel with a winning record gets fired. So Tennessee, that man, I can't pinpoint that. That one is intriguing. Now, I don't know who could take that job. That one's interesting. That one I haven't even begun to think about. All the other ones are
Yeah.
fairly, to think about. But Tennessee is still fresh and it's still very surprising because
Yeah.
it's like of all things, Mike Vrabel. I mean, he was a winning coach. It was
Right.
just in the AFC Championship not too long ago.
Yeah, and I'm with you on some of these vacancies. I think, if Coach Belichick does leave, I think, or resigns or whatever it might be, I do think Mike Vrabel is the easy choice. To put in there, obviously, Gerard Mayo is another guy, a guy who returned last season to maybe be the heir apparent to Coach Belichick. I'm not of the mindset that Coach Belichick is going to go right into another coaching job. I can see him taking a year off, maybe coming down to Tuscaloosa, hang out with his best friend Nick, see how that goes. With Carolina, I think they go get a Dan Quinn. I think to your point, it's a kind of a bad job, and only an experienced head coach truly would want to take it because it has the job that can, if you're young, it can either make your career if you turn them around, or it can break your career and you will never have a shot again if it goes horribly. And I think having a guy like Dan Quinn, you're going to pay a lot of money to get him, but he's a guy that's already shown the ability to build a team and a roster around a young quarterback that's still trying to find their way. So we know that he can hire offensive staff. Hiring offensive coordinators is probably one of his best traits, which is important when you're hiring a defensive coach. So that's a guy I can see Carolina bringing in. And I don't know if it's Everino, who's their defensive coordinator now. He's a
Mm-hmm.
guy that a lot of people have been looking at as maybe somebody that can come in and take that job. Obviously, Coach Wilkes might be somebody that they bring back, maybe a guy they should have given the job to begin with. So we'll see on that front. Washington, I'm thinking Ben Johnson. I think it's second to the Chargers job in that you have new ownership, but kind of some great guys in that building now. You have number two overall pick. You pretty much have a good defense already. So
Mm-hmm.
now you can maybe build out that offensive line, obviously get your quarterback of the future if that's what you want to do. You have the assets to go get a veteran if that's what you want to do. So I could see that a job like that being attractive to Ben Johnson. And for Tennessee, I got two names. I think this could be a shot for Coach Bieniemy. I can see Tennessee saying, "Hey, we want to give him a shot to run the ship and think what he can do offensively for our team." Obviously, going to be building around Will Levis and Tajay Spears offensively, and obviously they have some defensive pieces. But I can see those guys, some of those veteran guys like the Harold Landrys of the world, getting finding new homes, like a lot of their other veteran players. But obviously, their GM having San Francisco ties. You might get a guy like a Slowick, maybe their guy. So those San Fran guys like to stick together. So you can see someone like that taking their job. But just want to close, man. Let's talk about NFL wild card. Probably the deepest playoff weekend, or just playoffs in general, that we've had in some time, where you really don't know who's going to win. You might have your picks, but there's really no guarantee that this team may win versus this team. But we're going to start with the AFC. We got the number 2 seed Bills going up against the 7 seed Steelers. We got the 3 seed Chiefs. They're going to be hosting the 6 seed Dolphins. And then we got the 4 seed Texans hosting the 5 seed Browns. So in those 3 matchups, man, who you got?
Well, I'm going to be I love the underdog story with the Cleveland Browns right now. I mean, freaking Joe Flacco just coming off the couch and just killing it like it's excuse me, like it's freaking 2015 again or something like that. But I want to see the Texans win. I mean, from the very beginning, I was very adamant on Twitter. I'm like, if they follow these 3 steps, they'll be successful. I didn't know they were going to be this successful in year 1. I mean, they go out and get D'Amico Ryans, their former player. Then he brings his buddy from San Francisco, like you say, all San Fran guys stick together, and Bobby Slow gets OC. Then they get C.J. Stroud, who they wanted all along, and I'm sure they're happy that Lovie Smith won that last game for them. They get him. So I'm going to go with the Texans over the Browns, and then you have the Bills and the Steelers. I mean, I love Mike Tomlin. Love Mike Tomlin to death. I mean, he's one of probably the best coaches I've ever seen in my lifetime. I mean, love the guy to death. But I would have to say I don't think the Steelers have the firepower for the Bills. I just think the Bills are going to, put up. I'm not going to say numbers, but I mean, I can see it being like maybe a 28, like 10 type of game with the Bills winning. And then Chiefs Dolphins. It seems like the Dolphins have kind of cooled off. I mean, that offense, I love the Mike McDaniel offense, but it just seems like the offense is kind of cooled off in a way. I mean, Tyreek left the Bills game the other day limping off the field, so Tyreek might be beat up, and then you have a lot of other injuries across the board. So I would have to say, I mean, you can never count Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid out, no matter, even if Matt Nagy is the OC technically. But I would have to go with Andy Reid and the Chiefs on that one too.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you on some of these. I mean, look, I love Josh Allen, and it's great that they were pretty much out of the playoffs and fought their way to not only win their division, but also getting the 2 seed in the conference. And Coach Tomlin always showing that he is one of the best in the game as a coach and a leader. And look, making the necessary changes of, hey, we need to make changes in his organization, firing the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, and rolling with the dice. Hey, your first round pick, Kenny Pickett, gets hurt. You're trying to find a replacement. Mason Rudolph comes in, is the hot guy, and not caring about roster spots or how much somebody's making. Hey, this is my guy right now and what's best for the team right now. And so we're rolling with Mason regardless of Kenny's health. And so that just shows that he's truly a team-oriented guy, and he's going to be close to the pulse of the team. And look, I think the Steelers are going to reward him for that. I think that his players are going to play for him. Obviously, being without T.J. Watt is going to be a little bit of a difficult task to go up against Josh Allen, but I think Josh Allen, he's shown at this point who he is, and I think he's going to make a couple plays where he gives you the game. I mean, he had 4 turnovers against Miami, and they just didn't capitalize. But I think as well coaches the Steelers are, I think they're going to capitalize maybe 2 or 3 turnovers that they get from the Bills, because they are going to have their opportunities. And I can see the Steelers coming in to Buffalo and upsetting the Buffalo Bills. And then we're going to be talking about, okay, what's going on with that organization? Do we have to tear everything down now? I'm with you on the Chiefs. I would love to pick the Dolphins. I love Coach McDaniel. You know how I feel about Tua. But they just haven't been a team. Every time they've been against a team that has a winning record, they shit the bed. Like, it's one thing to lose, right? But they get destroyed every time it's a must-have game against a top team in the league. And there's nothing they've shown me to say they're going to get it right this time versus that team, that coach, that quarterback in that arena. It's just not happening. And I can't pick against Pat Mahomes. I just can't. So I'm with you on the Chiefs winning that game, and I know you're picking with your heart a little bit with Houston, but I got the Browns coming in and winning that game. You pretty much, this is the battle for Coach of the Year essentially, because these are two guys that, one, Coach Ryan's his first year turning that organization around, winning the division. But you also have Coach Stefanski coming in, four different starting quarterbacks, having Joe Flacco come off the street and look like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, right? Playoff Joe, it's a real thing. I've seen it, and with his veteran leadership, and look, the defensive player of the year, Myles Garrett, man, probably should get MVP votes if we're being honest, because they're nowhere near the playoffs if he's not on this team. I think he's going to make it a little hard for the rookie in his first playoff start. And I think the Browns defense is going to make enough plays to get the Browns to win. It's going to be really close, probably going down into the full quarter. But I just think there's too much veteran leadership on the Browns. But it's probably going to be the best game in the AFC this weekend, if I had to guess. So I'm excited about that. And so we'll close with the NFC. You got the Cowboys.
Oh no, you
Hosting the
said it right.
Packers hosting the Packers in Dallas. Then you have the Lions hosting the Rams. Matthew Stafford, homecoming, a chance to do something he never did in that building, which is win a playoff game. And then you got the Bucks and the Eagles. So what do you got in those three games?
In no shape or form am I picking the Bucks to win any playoff game right now, because after basically not putting up a single touchdown and just 3 field goals against Carolina, who is
Mm-hmm.
just downright horrible, I am not expecting Baker Mayfield and the Bucks to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I know the
Right.
Philadelphia Eagles are struggling right now, but there's no way that I'm going to say Jalen Hurts is going to lose the Baker Mayfield led Tampa Bay Bucks. That's not
Right.
happening. So I got the Eagles by a country mile. The Packers and Cowboys. That's interesting. I mean, I dislike the Cowboys, but they do have a good defense. And the Green Bay Packers, I mean, kind of have been putting it together late, right,
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the season. And the Cowboys, most of the time in the playoffs, I hate to say it, I know their fan base is probably going to chew me out for this, but they've been choking since 1996 in the playoffs. I mean, it's not feelings, it's facts. I mean, I really think sometimes we see in games. I mean, I like Dak Prescott, Louisiana native. I mean, but he chokes in big games. We've seen it this year. So I'll get the Packers, and then what's the other game?
Lions and Rams.
Lions Rams. I didn't forget about that. That's gonna. There's probably two games that I'm gonna definitely be watching, even if they're on at the same time. I'm gonna have one. I don't think they're on at the same time, but even if they were, I would have one on the computer, one on the tablet, one on the TV, and Lions, Texans. Texans, Browns, then Lions, Rams. I mean, those are the two games for the wild card that you want to watch, and
Yeah.
the storylines. Matthew Stafford returning to Ford Field. I mean, trying to win a playoff game in that building, which he's never done. And then you got the Lions, who haven't won a playoff game or even gotten remotely close since the 90s when
Yeah.
Barry Sanders was there. I would, I mean, I love Stafford, but I gotta say, I love what Dan Campbell has done. And
Mm-hmm.
the Lions winning the playoff game only just helps Ben Johnson's resume if that offense, absolutely destroys the Rams defense. Because, I mean, you got Aaron Donald over there still. I mean, Raheem Morris is a good DC who's up for excuse me, head coaching job. So I mean, I would have to say the Lions win that one by a small margin.
Okay. Okay. I like it. I like it. And yeah, man, the NFC playoff wildcard weekend is full of storylines, as you said. I mean, Cowboys and Packers. You got Coach McCarthy coaching against the Packers. You got the Cowboys in general having a chance to right the playoff wrongs over the last 2 decades and really make some noise. Dak Prescott, man of his word, he said he wasn't going to throw more than 10 picks, only threw 8 on the year, I think 8 or 9 to 38 passing touchdowns. So a guy who should get some MVP votes, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Um, but you know, the Packers, they've been doing well. Jordan Love's been doing well. But I do think this might be the Cowboys' year to really put some faith in their fan base. I mean, they've pretty much been having faith for years, but I think tangible faith, a true reason to say the Cowboys are back. I think it's going to start with this matchup. I do think the Cowboys are going to win this game. Maybe they should. I think they're going to have to devote some attention to the run game, because if they try to get in a shootout with Green Bay, they may lose. I think Green Bay is also going to want to make some key plays in the run game, but also on third down. That the winner of third down conversions is going to win this game. You have two great edge rushers in this game. You got Gary over in Green Bay, and then you got Michael Parsons in Dallas, and so those are records, game records, and so we'll see who comes to play. Um, I think it'll be a good game for the most part, but I do think the Cowboys will probably make one more score late to kind of put it out of reach, and so I can see them winning, and then I gotta hear it for the rest of the week. Uh, Here in Texas about how about them Cowboys, but it is what it is.
Mm-mm-mm.
I did have them. I did have them predicted to go to the NFC Championship game, so it's fine by me. Lions and Rams. Jared Goff playing against the team that said you're not good enough to get us a Super Bowl, and then immediately showed him why they said that because they got a Super Bowl the very next season. Matthew Stafford, a guy that put his body on the line literally for the Lions organization, and it just never panned out to be what they wanted it to be. So a lot of memories there. So him having a chance to come back home essentially and win a playoff game and break the hearts of Lions fans one more time, which he's pretty used to. So um, in that game, I do have the Rams winning. Look, I'm with you, man. I love the Lions. I love what Coach Campbell has been able to do. But his aggressiveness is a scary aggressiveness. And I think we've seen it's costing him a lot of games already. And a guy like Jared Goff, we understand that pressure, especially pressure in the interior, if you can get him off his spot, he will struggle. He will turn that ball over. And you are going to see a force to be reckoned with in Aaron Donald, who's healthy. They got him healthy towards the end of the year. This is his time. This is his season, his favorite time of the year. I think he's going to make some plays. If David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs can do some things in the run game, it might help because the Rams are susceptible to giving up big plays in the run game. But thinking quarterbacks, thinking coaches is just hard for me. I think the Rams have the advantage in both categories, and so I just got to go with them with the upset, so to speak, in this game. And then I'm with you. I'm not picking the Bucks. I mean, they won the division with 9 games, couldn't even put up a touchdown against the Panthers, and obviously, if not for an idiotic play by Chark and then a questionable penalty on another touchdown, they're losing 14-9 to the Carolina Panthers, the worst team in the NFL. So, no, I think the Eagles, I think they, you work your ass off all that season. You get to the Super Bowl, you have a chance to win. It doesn't pan out. And you're kind of like, okay, we just got to get back to that. And I think having that mindset of, we just got to get back to the Super Bowl, they let some little things get out of the way, some simple things that we got to know them for. Not really running the ball as much as they should this year, trying to rely too much on Jalen as a passer. They've obviously had some injuries on the offensive line, those with their right tackle. Defense has taken a severe step back, but at the end of the day, those trenches, they tell the whole story. So if those guys can find their rhythm at this point in the year, which I think they will, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And so I just think Philly, switches, that switch or flips that switch to where it's like it's playoff time. We're right there for the Super Bowl. It's time to get our act together because it's win or go home. And I think I'm with you. You say they're going to beat them by a country mile. I do think this won't be a game. I think the Eagles are going to come in there and they're going to handle business. And then we're going to be talking about, are the Eagles the most dangerous team in these playoffs after this matchup? So, you know how we like to overreact to things like that. But man, as we close, just want to thank you again, Logan, for coming on the show, man. And talking football, it's always good to have you. Brings back memories. So excited to have you, man. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Like I said in the beginning, y'all can find my show on YouTube, Sports Étouffée. I do it every Monday as much as I can, bearing work schedule. You can follow me on Twitter or X, as they call it now, at the Soulman57. I'm mostly on Twitter, but you can find me also on IG, Facebook. I'm everywhere. Wherever you look, that's where I'm at. So, I'm not hard to find.
Yes, sir. And so if there was anything today that we said that may have offended you, that's a good thing. It's an opportunity for us to learn. It's an opportunity for you to teach us. All we ask is that you keep it respectful. Peace.